All right, maybe we get started. I'm not entirely sure if Patty is able to make it, but maybe we'll start with just some quick introductions because I haven't been able to meet all of you individually yet, but I'll kind of kick off and then we can hand it over. Hi everyone, I'm Danielle. I'm the new chamber president. I was enrolled maybe in the past 3 or so weeks if I haven't met you at our chamber meeting. We have one coming up in early November, so I'd love to meet you there in person if you're able to make it. But thank you all for joining the Dobbs Ferry chat. I know that we have some new brick and mortar business owners on the call, and also a bunch that have been here for a bit. So thank you all for joining. I could pass it over to Dina to introduce herself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Dina Fleischman. I'm the vice president of the chamber, and I'm a resident of Hastings.
Awesome. Sherry, did you want to go through a couple things for the county?
Or do you want me to do that now, or do you want to do the introductions and then I'll do it?
Yeah, we could just we could do introductions and then get back to that.
I'm Rosen Asher. I'm the director of policy and programs for small business and chambers of commerce for Westchester County, and also a trustee in Dobbs Ferry.
Hi, Matt Rosenberg, trustee in Dobbs Ferry and theoretical small business owner in my little house here.
Awesome.
I'll go.
Yeah, thanks.
It's Michelle, immediate past president for the chamber and partner at Harper's and Dobbs Ferry.
Rob, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, Danielle. Thank you. Yes, thanks for inviting me to this, the first of many. My name is Rob Yamuter, the new village administrator here in Dobbs Ferry. Look forward to working with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Christy, Jess, Caitlin, Lauren, if you guys want to quickly say hi, and then we could just kind of get into some things. I know, Lauren, you're recently opened up your doors in Dobbs Ferry, so would love to hear from you as well.
Yes. Hi, guys. My name is Lauren. My husband and I, Ben, are opening a film photography studio, Analog on Hudson, neighbors of Harper's on 86 Main Street. We actually will be having our ribbon cutting grand opening very shortly. And very excited to be joining the Dobbs Ferry small business community. So just wanted to hop on the chat today to kind of scope out kind of what the chats are like and meet everyone on Zoom and hopefully meet you all in person. So happy to be here.
Congrats, Lauren. Hey, Patty.
I'm Christy. I'm
sorry.
Christy.
No, go ahead,
I'm
Christy.
at HUDCO. I'm the treasurer of the chamber and I'm the owner at HUDCO. And happy to be here.
Are we doing intros?
Yeah, we're doing a quick round of intros.
Are we up to me, or is everybody else gone?
Nope, we have a couple more people, but you could jump in.
Then I'll go now. Patty Steinschneider, Principal Gotham Design, local business here in Dobbs Ferry, active in a number of different ways with Sustainability Task Force, and the rep for Dobbs Ferry, or for the chamber to Dobbs Ferry. We're trying to find somebody else, so if anybody's interested, we'd love to have somebody else join me in that, because we like to have at least two, if not more. And also sometimes semi-chair of kind of the Festa. Kind of.
Awesome. Thank you. Jess and Caitlin, do you guys want to just quickly intro and then we'll be in good shape?
I'm Jessica Galen. I am the owner of Gloomy Cheese and Provisions on Cedar Street in Dobbs, and I'm also a member of the Dobbs Ferry Board of Trustees.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I am the owner of Eyes on Hudson, 66 Main Street. I'm the eye doctor there and love being part of the downtown Dobbs Ferry community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, Sherry, if you want to jump in with some county updates, and then Patty, if you want to kick off with any specific topics for Dobbs, we can do that as well.
Okay, excellent. So I'll be really brief. We're really focused right now on workforce development efforts and helping people to get jobs and helping employers to find people. The unemployment rate in Westchester County is very low. It's like 3%. However, there are segments of the population where the unemployment rate is as high as 60%. When you look at people with disabilities, people who were formerly incarcerated. And there is also, we're also focusing on helping people get trained for the jobs of the future, not to sound too Jetsony about it, but that there's new industries and things moving in here. We're very focused on clean energy and the life sciences and financial tech. And while there are jobs and advanced manufacturing, there are lots of jobs in those fields here in Westchester, but they don't have people to fill them. So we are working with Westchester Community College and others to get people trained for the jobs that exist, and understanding that not everybody goes to college, so that there are different routes that people can take. My partner Martha Lopez and I just kind of put together a first quarter calendar of events that we're waiting to just hear back from the county executive scheduler, but we will be doing a job fair for entering and re-entering the workforce. So if anybody has a business where you are open to people who maybe been out of the workforce for a while and training them or helping a young person get their start, those will be our focuses. We're going to do another diverse abilities job fair because those have been incredibly successful in helping people find out about opportunities and helping employers to reach a new pool of potential applicants. We're still working on trying to get a cybersecurity one together. For whatever reason, that's been the toughest in terms of all the moving parts. And we're hoping to do another event to bring the chambers and the MWBEs together. A couple of years, maybe maybe a year before the pandemic, we had a very successful event here that was a happy hour event. And people from the chambers brought food from their communities. So we had wine and beer, and it was really like a nice networking event. So we're looking into doing things like that. The county is about to go into their budget process. So we just had a public hearing yesterday at the Greenberg Public Library. But if you have anything that you would like the county executive to consider adding to the budget, you can always send an email and be as specific as possible of what you're asking for and why. So yesterday was a whole bunch of mostly not-for-profits who were asking the county to keep up the considerable amount of support that we do for that. Those are the big things that I have right now. We continue to go through all the communities that received the Downtown Improvement Grant. Dobbs Ferry is one of them. The consultants have been to Dobbs a number of times, and that now we're at the process where the consultants are waiting to hear from the municipalities about what stakeholders to interview and get feedback from. A survey will be launched for all 5 communities. So we're going to ask the chamber for their help in promoting that survey to get as many responses as possible from people who live, work, play, and get educated in Dobbs Ferry. And that's it.
So, yep, I think that's a good segue to some of the things I think we need to talk about a little bit. Really quick before we get to there, Festa update, it rained, but people showed up. Sherry and Michael Patino, 2 trustees, stood in the pouring rain in the parking lot to help check people in. But it got nicer during the course of the day. And one of the things that I think was a little accidental, but I'm thinking maybe we can run with it, is this year it was on Columbus Day weekend. And the reason that we've not had a rain date in the past has been because the idea is that we can't move it to Sunday because the DPW can't then show up at 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday to do their job. So I'm wondering, and I'd really like feedback from the chamber on it, something to think about, and then let me know. I'm thinking if we made it always be the Saturday of the Columbus Day weekend, we would always be able to have the option of the rain date on Sunday, which I've already talked with Steve about it. I've talked to other people about it, and I think that could be something that would be good. I have asked, Robert, our village administrator, if we could have a ferry discussion at one of the workshops with the trustees, so we can put that together. So I think that is something that would really be great. And I'd love to increase the participation of the chamber, not the obligations, responsibilities, work, or money. Just the, the more members of the chamber getting preferred. We already give a preferred rate, and really get them to take advantage of it. I know, Jess braved it. She was out there and had her cheese shop selling. She was nervous, I think, in the beginning that I was going to put too many people around her. I think as she saw the day filling in, she realized there was not a problem this year with too many people on the street, too many vendors crowding people out. But that something like that could happen in the future if we're not careful with it. So we should figure that out. Second thing that is I wanted to mention is the resiliency committee in Dobbs Ferry. We're part of the PACE program with 5 communities developing a resiliency plan. I think we're up to the point, our next meeting will be talking about how we do outreach to organizations within the community. And one that I would like, if you guys think it's a good idea, is I'd like to suggest that the chamber is a logical entity to be aware of what we're thinking of in terms of resilience, sustainability, how we handle different things. Right now, everything is, of course, even the program we're using is called C Rise, the letter C, Rise. The reality is, by the time raising sea levels would be threatening Dobbs Ferry, New York City is gone. So it's probably going to be a bigger problem than would be, what happens in Dobbs. But we do have all kinds of other vulnerabilities that we need to really understand. And our downtown is very key to any kind of event that we have, adverse event, being able to marshal the community to get things done. Part of that's going to be what the village is already looking at, which is a new response center, really, not just a fire station, but being able to consolidate the 2 fire companies with the ambulance corps, with other similar agencies that would be, there to protect us. And what you find in many of those places around the country, when they have a adverse situation, the more everyone understands where they go to help, the more help that you get and the more effective that help becomes. So I think that's something that the chamber could be engaged in. We're in the downtown, we're a place, we can provide things. We did when COVID first started hitting, many of the restaurants in town, Michelle was, heroic in putting together programs that were beneficial for her to keep her guys working, and also providing food for people who needed it. So we need to, chamber can be really good with that. And leading from resiliency into another major issue is Dobbs is moving forward with an RFQ for potential development of 3 parcels in the downtown that would, they're really, I count them all in the downtown. One's on Palisade Street, but it's in the area where we're having parking that we wish more people were using when they come to the downtown. So that's something we as a chamber should be aware of, and we should be participating in the discussion about what kinds of things we would hope that having those properties developed would bring to the village. I know we're talking affordable housing. I doubt that it'll be 100% affordable, because I don't think that will pencil out for developers or provide the kind of project we need. And it will be an increase of tax base. We have already discussed at the meeting that there would be the first floor facing the street needs to be commercial. So we're talking of additional commercial spaces. Of course, people coming to the mic say, we already have empty stores. Why do we need more? But as many of you who are really good business people understand, the more businesses that we have, the more businesses we will support. You bring the critical mass. You don't survive by eliminating the competition. If you're going to have 2 ice cream parlors on the same beach, you put them right next to each other, not at either end. So everybody knows that's where you go for ice cream. The one guy's closed that day, they can get it from the other person. So we have opportunities there that I'm hoping the chamber wants to participate in.
Thanks, Patty. That was a lot of big topics. We'll start with the first, just because out of my curiosity and not necessarily.
Sorry, Danielle, could we back up to if there are questions for Sherry? Because we just kind of skipped over her. Because I have one in particular, but if anybody else, is that okay?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Sherry, for the and sorry if Christy, because this came up when we were meeting with Rob last week, if you guys have already figured this out, but who should our point of contact for the DIG grant be at the county level right now? Is it the consultants?
Well, you're working with the consultants, but I'm the contact if you have any county specific, issues, because I'm the one that was the architect of the grant. But really, if there are questions specifically about the process or what's going on or whatever, I think it's best to put all the questions to the consultant, and you can CC me. And if there's something that we need to do here, we will, but what we're doing is we're monitoring the process to make sure that everybody's kind of holding up their end of the bargain. One of the things that I'm real sensitive to is making sure that the chambers are included in all the municipalities, and that this isn't just the government making the decision about it, and also holding the municipalities accountable for what they need to provide the consultants with, because the process can't move forward if they don't get the information that they need. So if there's anything that you have any questions on, obviously you can always reach out to me, but I would say if it's something about what they're doing, send it to them, but CC me, and I keep everything in a folder, and I respond to everybody.
Yeah, I guess the main question from our point of view is like, who leads the relationship with the consultants? Is it the village?
So yeah,
Is
so
it, are we
whatever
supposed to be
name
in
was
on
given
everything,
when
or
the application was done, they specifically asked for a contact at the chamber and a contact at in the municipality. So the contact in the municipality is really Rob. We could say that it's the mayor, but really it's going to be Rob is going to be the one that's going to be facilitating this. So it's Rob in conjunction with whoever you want from the chamber. I mean, I think originally it was Michelle because she was the president at the time that this was done, but it doesn't have to be her. We just want to make sure that whoever it is at the chamber is in good communication with Rob for the village, to then make sure that you're both not reaching out to the consultants for the same thing, and that you both know this one's doing this, and that in terms of the stakeholders to be interviewed, that should be a joint process. They should be identified by both. And I think they asked for 10, but if you want to give them 15, that's fine too. Just don't give them less than 10, because you really want to make sure it's comprehensive.
Right. I will add, thank you, Sherry. Yeah, I will be the liaison, so please copy me or directly CC me somehow. So I'll be in the mix for this important project, this important grant. So please use me as the funnel through the municipal contact.
Christy, I think you were the one on the application. Are you okay still being the contact, or?
Yes,
we can.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm still here.
That's perfect, because Christy's kind of hybrid, so she knows both ends of the thing. So I think that's perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for bringing us back, Michelle. That was helpful. And I don't want to quickly transition. Any other questions on that front? We can move into some of the topics that Patty brought up as well. I think for me personally, I'd love to know, just like I mentioned before, I haven't been super familiar with the process in the past with the chamber and Ferry Festa, and I'm curious what the feedback process is from business owners and participants that are participating with Ferry Festa, or maybe that are not participating with Ferry Festa. Is there some sort of post-mortem that we're all having, or what's the process there typically?
I mean, every year before it, there's a small group that really voices objection to having it. The one year, the hot dog place is closed, but they used to complain about it. And finally, one year I said, I don't need to do this anymore. Let's just cancel it. And they pivoted instantly and said, it's our best day of the year. Sometimes a lot of the complaints you get are complaints. If I talk to Maurice at Sam's, he complains about it, but he does a great job and really makes it, even when it's raining, he sets the whole thing up and makes it really good. So I don't know if it's the complaints. I'd love to get real feedback of people of what they think would actually make it work better for them. I know some of the restaurants would prefer to have it on Sunday. I know a lot of the other merchants are saying, they already work 6 days a week.
Mhm.
And, going and being open again on Sunday would just not be work for them. So I think what we might want to do is actually come up with some short, which probably means not written by me, short, questionnaire that we send out to the businesses in Dobbs Ferry, specifically, particularly the ones in the downtown that are affected by it, but in general to the businesses in Dobbs Ferry. And then we did not get the kind of crossover participation from Hastings, Ardsley, and Irvington that I had hoped. A lot of times with the locals, what happens is they sign up the week before, during that week. And of course, when they're looking at the weather forecast and it's depicting, 12 inches of rain an hour or something, they probably say, you know what, I'm not going to sign up. But the opportunity here really is a Rivertown's Festa. And I think the more that we can get the other people who are members of the chamber to want to participate, the better. So maybe finding out what would make it better for them through.
Yeah,
I could just interject here. I just want to say that's not really a fair characterization, because the chamber actually did, I think it was both pre and post pandemic, do a pretty considerable outreach to downtown businesses. And the consensus was, that Sunday was the better day for the event. And we even presented it to the Board of Trustees, and it was decided both times to not move it to the Sunday. And so I can speak from a position of, I still have the letters from the businesses that they wrote. There are specific reasons why they think they should move it to Sunday. So I think Danielle's point about having some kind of postmortem, like some larger effort to really have a discussion, not just like a survey or, anecdotal, but really have a discussion about this event in general. And if we're going to close the streets in downtown at any point, having the discussion about what makes sense for the businesses if we're closing the streets, and really taking that into consideration would be appreciated. And I think that's how we get the chamber and chamber businesses more involved in the event. I think this event in particular just needs more discussion and more, we've always done it this way. It may not be the way that we should continue to do it.
Which is fine. And one of the things to make that work though is also, I've always been involved in the Festa. I have not yet ever gotten any of that feedback, and I'm a member of the chamber. It's not hard to find me, obviously. So I know that we were told that, but when we had that second meeting last year, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, when we were talking about having the Festa, but then we ended up canceling it. Those recommendations were made. It was I forget who it was. I think the interim village administrator, I think it was Richard, said, well, let's have a second meeting next week. And then no one from the chamber showed up. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the chamber on that. It's not, the goal is exactly as you said, to find a way of having that communication and making sure that we're looking at all the different components of it.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly jump in. The intent with my question was not to single out any business owners or what's been right or wrong in the past. It was more kind of what potentially should we do moving forward from a feedback perspective. I'm happy to brainstorm some ideas there, whether it's some sort of town hall style meeting, or if it starts with a survey and then it's a follow-up with results, or whatever the process is, just to make sure we're getting feedback from everybody. I'm sure if our chamber pass it around in email as well, whether it's, like I said, a meeting or if it's some sort of survey, I'm sure we'll get some attendance. So we definitely want to be partners in making sure that this is like the most profitable event for our merchants and business owners. So just something to keep in mind. Maybe we because we are getting farther and farther away from that weekend, we do it sooner rather than later, but we can figure out the timing for that.
Yeah,
whatever works for everybody.
I actually think Michelle and I are kind of not necessarily saying the same thing, but having the same idea. We need to get the information and be able to build from that. Yeah,
definitely. Great. And then I know that Patty, there were a couple of those other committees and projects that you had mentioned. I'd love if you've already done this, great, and maybe I could have missed it or haven't seen it yet, but any, documents or packets on those memberships that you were discussing for development of downtown and those other projects, that would be great. I'd love to kind of review some of that information so I'm a little bit more prepared for those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have an RFQ yet, right? It's the idea is
So if I can jump in, so I'm the liaison to the Affordable Housing Task Force. There's been a lot of work that was done over the last few years to try to figure out, how we could increase workforce housing in Dobbs Ferry. So largely because of the governor's, failed mandate last year that would have taken zoning out of local hands to a large extent and mandated development near transportation that might have been, well out of scale. We sort of moved up a timeline and decided to try to go and get ideas for what workforce housing could look like in Dobbs Ferry. So we looked at a draft RFQ last board meeting, which was a week ago today, and gave some feedback to the village planner, a woman named Valerie Monastra from an engineering company called Nelson Pope, who's on retainer with the village. And we identified 3 parcels. Now you can only put out an RFQ for parcels of land that you actually own. Like we couldn't say, tell us where we could exercise eminent domain and, build affordable housing where grandma lives. So those 3 parcels are 2 empty lots on Lower Lower. I can't give you addresses because they don't have addresses because they're empty lots.
Cedar.
I'm sorry, on Lower Cedar. Sorry about that. Near the intersection with Main. And then sort of the pie in the sky idea is we have a big parcel of land that is the 99 Cedar Street lot. And there could be a significant number of housing units that go in there. The tension is we also don't want to lose parking. The Affordable Housing Task Force met with 4 different developers for information gathering purposes. And all of them assured us that we would be able to keep a significant amount of the current municipal parking, even if there was a housing development, probably in an underground structure or something. There have been no designs put forward. We're finishing the RFQ. That'll go out at some point. An RFQ does not require that we adopt any one of them. It's really sort of a search for who looks like a good partner to then work with us to engage with the community, and particularly given the locations of these parcels, the downtown community, the business community, to figure out and implement an engagement process so that all voices are heard and we can make good decisions rather than the boards sort of sitting in isolation and looking at proposals. So there is an RFQ. It is in process. It hasn't gone out yet. When we receive responses, we will work on ways to disseminate them and engage with the public. They may or may not yield a project. We have no idea. We have no expectations. We only know that there are multiple problems that need to be solved on the affordable housing front, and the task force has done great work sort of preparing us with knowledge and insight to help us initiate that process.
And also just for colloquial information, Danielle, since you were asking, the mayor's newsletter this past week kind of spelled it out in plain English what the situation is. So if you don't get those emails, I can forward it to you.
I'm sorry for
stuff,
not using
that's
plain
kind of go-to
English.
place. No, you said it, but it's not written down somewhere that she can like kind of spend some
Right.
time with it and think about it.
Yeah,
and then
there's a
also I
long
would
piece in the
say-
newsletter, yeah.
And I would say both from the perspective, with my trustee hat on, I want to be sure that, business owners in the village that their concerns and their ideas are heard as the process moves forward. And we would love, for folks to come as, we most likely will be having another conversation about this at our next meeting, which is a week from today. I would definitely encourage folks to come and speak out, whether you're, whatever your position is, taking off my trustee hat and putting on my business owner hat. I personally am very excited about, more people living in the downtown and being able to walk to and patronize businesses without using cars. And I'm also excited about filling in. So the 2 lots on Cedar are currently just complete eyesore, overgrown, unused lots. And I think as a business owner, I'm interested in downtown sort of revitalization, the visual and welcoming appearance of the downtown. So I would be really thrilled to discuss with anyone offline kind of, what your thoughts are on this. And then also I definitely encourage you to come to the meeting. And if you have, a take on it or just some ideas one way or another, or somewhere in between, we'd love to hear from you, because we want to be sure that we're really, that all voices are being heard. And as you can imagine, I'm concerned about things like overdevelopment and concerned about congestion and concerned about more cars in the downtown and parking challenges. And those are really valid and important concerns that we want to be taken care of, but we also need to make sure that all concerns and all priorities from across the community are being aired. So definitely encourage you to speak up, no matter where, what you're thinking of.
Yeah. I think that's great, Jess. That is exactly, I appreciate your perspective on it and wearing both hats. I know how challenging that is at times. I thought Matt described it very well, and definitely plain English. But the word he used is exactly the right word for what we're really talking about, which is workforce housing. If we start talking about, what is the biggest need we have in Dobbs Ferry in terms of housing? The Dobbs Ferry need really is that our local workers, the people who staff our village, the people who are police officers, our school teachers in town are pretty well boxed out of being able to live in Dobbs Ferry by the cost. So what we need is housing that, I kind of tried to say it a little bit when I was up at the mic, but I was only given, 3 minutes. The idea of 60% and 80%, I believe we can have a component of that. But maybe it's consistent with the county's thing with 10%. 10% goes to that 60 or 80. But we are also needing to provide 100 and 120% AMI so that we're addressing exactly what, the ability to get the people living here who work here and who make this a strong community. The tagline that I've been using lately is that when we see these bigger storms, the resiliency side of it hitting us, and all of a sudden your basement's filling up with water and it's hitting your electrical system and you've got this emergency. When I run down the street, I don't want everyone's door that I'm knocking on to be a lawyer, a doctor, or a financial planner. I'd like to be able to knock on the door of a plumber or an electrician or somebody who works for the DPW says, we got these pumps, we can help you. The saving grace in Dobbs Ferry is our volunteer fire department. And they do an amazing job and they need a new facility. And that's another thing that's going to play into this and needs to be part of that same conversation. Just on talking about wearing different hats, I'm on the 5-person executive committee that's putting together the Housing Summit in Albany, which will be taking place on January 26th and 27th, which is intended specifically, as Matt laid it out, to provide the opportunity for there to be a coming together between the state with their idea of mandates and the local level where the work actually gets done with mayors. So the idea, it will be a 2-day event. It will be dealing directly with those needs. And we'll be sending out the save the date, I think, in about 2 weeks or so. But this is something I'm hoping that we can get a lot of participation from Westchester and include Dobbs Ferry in it. And the lots we're talking about, the first time I remember talking about those 2 of those lots was 1983. I think Rob has in his office somewhere a 3-ring notebook that says August 2009. And in there's actually a plan of revitalization of Cedar Street involving those lots with parking behind, access coming in off of the intersection at Main and Cedar, which actually got so far as to have the village's consulting engineers working with the Taconic State Park System, and they gave a green light to it. They were willing to have the driveway that served parking behind the buildings on Cedar Street coming in from where the aqueduct, where that intersection is, which would cross the aqueduct. So there's some really cool opportunities here if we can get all of these different things all rolled into one, which of course is in our downtown. And there's no one who cares more about our downtown than the chamber.
I have a question, just from like a practical perspective. So like these decisions ultimately, like approval of, building and changes is ultimately made by the residents. And so I understand, hearing out the businesses on what, they need in the downtown to survive. But is there enough of a cohort of residents who I know there's a lot of people concerned about congestion, and obviously, you can't build without, understanding all of the nuances and, trying to mitigate, negative impacts of it. But are there residents who are, enough residents who are pro-development that are also speaking out? Because lots of business owners also aren't residents. We're not voters,
right.
And so ultimately, there needs to be a considerable amount of residents backing this. What does that look like?
I will say this, I don't blame anyone for not attending the board meetings. They're very, very long. They go very, very late. And unless you're Patty Steinschneider, who's fascinated by every little thing. However, the people who do show up are the most negative. It is very rare that we get, aside from when we had the public hearings on cannabis and the dispensaries and stuff, it is very rare that we have an overwhelming number of people who are praising the work that gets done and how we're doing it, and usually the biggest objectors are the people who've been here the longest and have an idea of what Dobbs Ferry should be.
Right.
That being said, if I think it would behoove, and I know Vance started to do this, when he was involved, he came to the board meetings, to see what's going on. So I do think it's good for the chamber to be there in person if they can, or at least on Zoom, so you hear it for yourself and you have the opportunity to speak during courtesy of the floor. You could certainly email us. You can certainly request a workshop thing to get on the agenda to talk about working with the business community and get their ideas, and as Matt said also, if and when we do get proposals or ideas, there's going to be a series of public conversations and town hall meetings and opportunities for people to weigh in and give feedback.
One of
So
the
it's not going to be anything that gets decided on just some Tuesday night. We're just sitting around thinking, hey, let's do this. So
right.
it's going to be a very long process involving anyone who wants to get involved with it.
Right. This is really going to be sort of years, I think. It's just the initiation of the process, and one of the best practices that the Affordable Housing Task Force learned during a lot of the trainings that they've done at the PACE has a land use program that does trainings on this, and that they've attended quite frequently. And one of the best practices is like to keep those community engagement forums focused on a single topic. So for example, there might be a community forum on downtown revitalization. There might be what it means for the businesses. There might be a forum on what the implications are for parking. There might be so each thing can be addressed sort of in full, in isolation, rather than having very scattered conversations that wind up being, we want it versus we don't want it. And and it was actually interesting at there were a lot of people who attended the meeting that we had last Tuesday, where this was just an agenda item that was published, right? There was no like big whoop-de-doo made about it, because it's it was just really giving feedback on a RFQ document. And nobody came out and said, I'm against affordable housing. People spoke up and said, you really need to consider the amount of congestion. We really don't want to lose the ability to park at that Cedar Street lot. We don't want it to be too big and out of scale and ugly. We don't want to, we think the downtown is kind of like over consumed with cars already. And, but nobody came out and said, like, we're not for making Dobbs Ferry more affordable. So the problem, as with everything, is more I'm going to generalize and say, we want it, but here right next to us is a little problematic. And and the purpose of those forums is going to be to and I don't even know if we're going to get proposals that look like doable, or, as Patty said, pencil out as good business for the developer. But if we do, like, having those conversations in isolation allows us to address things one by one, which can potentially both influence the design, because after each one, the developer can go say, oh, I heard this about the need for parking. I'm going to make adjustments to the plan in order to accommodate what appeared to be the consensus. I heard this about what the businesses need, so I'm going to adjust the plan in order to so all of these are about sort of the evolution of a plan, not the selling
Right.
of a plan. And I think those kind of subtleties are not easy to communicate, and certainly not easy to communicate in a sort of a courtesy of the floor format. But they are, the Affordable Housing Task Force is developing a survey that will go to everybody on the village mailing list. They're developing a flyer that talks about what affordable housing is and isn't, so that people who think that it's like we're building projects in Dobbs Ferry understand that the area median income for family of four is $147,000. We're not talking about low affordable and low income might have some overlap, but we're not talking about like building low income housing. We're talking about the RFQ includes the mandate that it fit into this sort of the general aesthetic of the downtown. Like, there's a lot of requirements. One of the things we asked for was like, tell us your funding sources, like tell us what restrictions on AMI, the area median income, may come with some of those funding sources. What buildings, what projects have you done before? How have you managed them? Or do you do them as rentals, or do you do them as affordable but for sale? How does building management work in either of those cases? What is your experience leading community forums and and adjusting your plans based on those? So it really is a search for sort of concepts and partners, and there's no approved project that we're now searching for the right, arrangement of bricks to build. It really is a search for feasibility, ideas, partners, possibilities, to be followed by letting the residents help evolve whatever the plan is destined to become. Sorry, I was long-winded.
Oh, that was
Can I just answer Michelle's question? So I think there are lots of residents who want more affordability in Dobbs, both from a sort of what's right perspective and from a need to, they want to stay in the village, or they want their kids to be able to move to the village. And I also think that even though many business owners do not live in the village, there are, our community residents of Dobbs Ferry love that we have, a small town feel, and they want to support the ability of businesses to stay in the village. So I think hearing from, if there are business owners who, whatever their opinions are, I think that residents would benefit from hearing from business owners, even if they don't live here, because if business owners say this is something that's good for business, for example, that would be a perspective that, residents might not, have considered previously, because they were thinking about it as a resident. They're not thinking about it from the perspective of a business owner. But if a business owner can afford to stay in the village because they, there's more people shopping in the village, then, that would be something I think the residents would be interested to hear about.
If we go back to say between 2005 and 2010, when the land use committee was working on the change to the land use regulations, there were over 100 workshops in those 5 years, and we had several of those workshops. The whole series of workshops dealt with the downtown from the business standpoint, and we did have a very good turnout at that point with businesses. Of course, it was no big shocker when the businesses were saying their primary issue is parking. I don't share that, but that's what you hear all the time. But other things came out too, in terms of business hours and garbage collection and stuff like that. So I think that's a key. I don't think that's done after you've selected your preferred contractor, developer. I think that is done in the process while you're preparing your RFQ, so that you're getting that feedback already put together, so that by the time you're going to the street, there's a clarity for anybody. They know what to expect. I mean, this is something we do all the time. I've already gotten 3 calls about this since Tuesday from 3 fairly major developers, one local, one from Long Island that does a lot of affordable housing. And they've asked me if I can send them all the backstory on this. And I've said, well, I don't know that there is a lot of backstory right now, and it hasn't been shared with me. So I think we need to have that information. We need to get that, and that takes place in workshops.
Right. So
go ahead. I just like, the other thing is, like, I think you kind of touched on this actually, Matt, like separating it's good to get opinions. Like, for example, we poll our members and even people who aren't members if there's, a big topic that needs to be considered. But we also look at like best practices where it's been done before a certain way, and like how it's improved for businesses, because we're not like in a vacuum here, right? Like, we're not in our own little bubble, and there are best practices across the country, I'm sure, that we could learn from, and their concerns about congestion and parking are not unfounded. So I guess, how do we present facts about the reality of this in a way that comes from like a sense of authority and like it's factual versus it's my opinion versus your opinion? Because I think that's where we got stuck with cannabis. That's where we get stuck a lot these days in general. Like, how do we present this idea as and address their concerns as, yes, that's valid, but look at it this other way, and how we can mitigate those things, by XYZ. I don't know.
And you're absolutely right. And that is one of the things that the Affordable Housing Task Force has been doing, is gathering best practices, both through the trainings that they've been doing at Pace, and through just, you know, Googling around and looking for, you know, for stories. We were at the NICOM New York, what's NICOM stand for, Shari? New York Committee of Municipal Officials, something like that. And you know, and the mayor and I, and I'm sure others who were not sitting next to me and the mayor, were you know, attended some workshop that was about case studies of adding affordable housing in different ways that was done, using, you know, combination of village land and encouraging the sale of private land. And like there are a lot of stories and a lot of best practices that are being gathered. You know, part of the advantage of working with Pace is that we have the ability to take advantage of two incredibly experienced women and their organizations, Tiffany Zazuela and Rose Noonan, who are helping us through this process. So yeah, I agree, Patty. And I was just on an Affordable Housing Task Force meeting last night, where we were talking about planning out community forums that would happen, you know, in tandem with the publishing of the RFQ. In a perfect world, we would have already started those discussions. There was, and I can't go into great detail, but there was some there were some funding sources that came up that had a ticking clock on them. So we wanted to get the RFQ out in order to see whether any of the developers who might respond might make use of some of those sort of time-bound funding sources. And if they do, they do, and if they don't, they don't. And we'll see what comes back. But that's kind of like the reason we're doing it now, working on the RFQ now, rather than having, you know, waited for what over the early summer we agreed our initial plan was going to be, which was going to be to do a bunch of community forums before we ever got started on the RFQ. So sometimes, you know, chasing funding changes things up a little bit. So I wish it hadn't.
I just wanted to quickly jump in, Michelle, just because we have just a minute left, and I want to make sure that we obviously this is a hot topic, and I want us to have more of these conversations in these meetings. I think, Patty, if you can keep on top of sending us the dates for these forums so that we can pass around to the chamber members, would be great. I know that they're going to cover a bunch of different topics, so if there's a calendar, that would be awesome. Just quickly, because I know we have just 1 minute, and then if people can stay on to chat more, that'd be great. But we do have pivoting entirely events coming up with the chamber that a lot of business owners are participating in. The Halloween trolley is happening tomorrow, starting at HUDCO and Dobbs Ferry, obviously. And the first
almost sold out. FYI, the family tour is sold out. The 8 o'clock tour, one of the adult tours is almost sold out, and the other one is at least halfway. So get your tickets.
The 8 o'clock, we just have 4 tickets left, and the 6:30 is, we have plenty. We have 12, but yeah, we're on the other 2. We're really close to sold out.
Right. And then we have Taste Local on 11/4 and our holiday trolley on 12/2. I'm sure everyone's been getting our emails, but want to make sure that, you know, you have the opportunity to sponsor if you'd like to, if you're a small business owner, or you're participating in some fashion if you'd like to, or sending around details to your residents.
What are the hours for Taste Local? Because I didn't see the hours.
I believe it's 12 to 4, but let me triple check.
We extended it an hour this year to give people more time to go around, to hopefully encourage more use of the trolley. And also because the villages were great in helping us with funding, so we were able to afford a longer period of time with the trolley. So thank you.
Yep. Terrific.
Great. I know we're a minute over. If everyone wants to continue the conversation, that's totally fine. But I wanted to make sure we covered those last little events that are upcoming because we have a lot happening in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's very important.
I just one last point I wanted to make just about like the reason I asked those questions was because I think that sometimes I know that sometimes businesses are hesitant to speak up because a lot of times, I mean, really our opinion is tied to our livelihood and is the reality of it. And not everyone is like Jess or I who, you know, or my business partners also who have, you know, are grounded in, you know, what we believe in and feel like our, you know, business and our beliefs can coexist and we're very thick-skinned. Not every business is going to feel like it's their place to speak up. So having more, like having a good cohort of residents that are there supporting the idea, having, you know, lots of things coming from like a factual, you know, kind of position is helpful, I think, to get them to speak up behind the cause is just my point. I mean, when I spoke up for cannabis and Hastings, I got ousted from the parent 10706, you know, Facebook group, despite having years of hosting children's events in, you know, our restaurant. So that's one example. I don't care. You know, we're always going to speak up for what we believe in, but not every business owner, you know, especially restaurants, you don't talk about politics at the bar. It's, you know, the standard. It's where everybody can kind of coexist together. So that's just my, you know, my point there is that I think we, you know, we want their opinions but we also want like the other important pieces to be in place to support this idea.
That's critical.
And I will say that, you know, the more that you're involved and present, the more you're part of the process, you know, and it doesn't have to get political as much as it has to be something that could help with the governance part and help with to carry things out. So we only know what we hear. We can't possibly, as trustees, be everywhere. You know, we all have day jobs and we all kind of, this is like a volunteer gig basically. And so we try, but there are things, and I've always encouraged people to come to the meetings because people will be like, oh, I sent you 3 emails, and you know, I personally have 3 different email addresses and, you know, I probably get 2,500 emails a day. So I'm lucky that I get what, you know, respond to what I respond to. But if someone's standing in front of me and talking to me about what's going on, you know, that's helpful. So if you can show up, you know, and we'll always be available to you to answer any questions that you have.
And Christy put something in the chat. There's a forum of a sort of a meet and greet for the incumbent Dobbs Ferry board tonight at Piccola Trattoria. So I'm sure some of us will also be there for the ribbon cutting on Thursday. Personally, can't get enough of Piccola. But we hope you'll attend. And if there are any other members of the chamber that would like to attend and, you know, and chat with us, you're welcome to about any topic at all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.